So we're back, and the next thing that we're going to do is do the same experiment, but this time with the Diet Coke. And so we're going to pour out again. We're going to try to get as close as we can to the 20 ml mark, which is still where the plastic, the white plastic mark is. Well, I missed it by about 10 mils, but it's okay for this experiment. The thing that you'll notice is that the bubbles, the sensation of that was quite a lot different than what it was with the Coke. The bubbles are actually smaller, and it all comes out faster, but it also dissipates much faster. It's hardly bubbling at all now. There's just very, very small bubbles in the solution. And basically not visible at all with this. So we're going to take our Mentos. This is the reason why we have a tray too, is because it is easy to spill this stuff as you're pouring it. And you notice that there is a difference in the bubbles. The bubbles are actually quite a lot smaller when they're with the Diet Coke, and there's almost like this column of bubbles that come and rush up into the graduated cylinder. The volume change is not as much, but the rate at which it's bubbling is faster, and the bubbles continues bubbling for quite a while longer. In both cases, I did want to point out that if you actually let them continue to sit for a while, this one is with the Coke, and I'll try to see if I can get a good image of that. Not really, but you can actually see that the bubbles, the size of them, it continues to bubble, they get smaller and smaller, and eventually the coating comes off of the Mentos entirely, and you're just left with kind of the gooey gelatin stuff, and you can kind of see that this is quite a lot different looking than what they were originally, and see a difference in the color. I'm going to put them down here, and you can kind of see a little bit difference, but you'll be able to tell very clearly because the Mento, after it's been eaten up by the Coca-Cola, it actually becomes mostly translucent, and it just leaves that sticky, gooey stuff that's inside the Mentos afterwards. So I'm not going to do this experiment, but one of the things that you can do is you can see if the Mentos fruit actually bubbles any more or less than the Mentos, the mint ones, because you'll know that in like the Mythbusters, they actually use the mint, and that's the one that's more commonly found on the internet. But if you try it, you'll probably find that the fruit doesn't actually make any difference. And the reason is that because the coatings are actually made of the same chemicals. There's a process that they call sugar coating that is used for some kinds of candies, and it's actually very similar to what is used by the pharmaceutical industry to coat some types of drugs. If you've seen ones that have like a colored coating on the outside and it's a white pill on the inside, then it's got some type of coating on it. And that coating is actually what you can actually see that is causing a surface reaction with the Coke. The Coke actually, it already has bubbles in it, and they put far more bubbles in it than it can hold at normal room temperature, but it's activated by the Mentos. And there's a belief that it's actually the surface of the Mentos that is rough that causes it to work more. In the past, before Mentos were made available, they actually used this did this experiment with Lifesavers, and you could put a whole pack of Lifesavers, and it also expanded and blew up, which is not the way the chemists would call it, but in the same way as you see with the Mentos experiment, but it wasn't nearly as vigorous. So one of the other things that I wanted to point out was just when you pour out Diet Coke versus Coke, even without the Mentos, you will see a pretty significant difference in the foaming, and we could have seen that from the video earlier, but I wanted to make sure and show kind of my best version of a side-by-side comparison. So I'm going to go get 2 clear cups to be able to do this, because I think that will work better.